So that could explain some differentiations, and that also creates some opportunities. If your site hasn't updated as quick as the hotel's own website, that could be a chance to save some money.
And for people who are looking outside of their credit card and travel booking website, a benefit of booking through a third party is, like we're talking about, that pricing is lower. But what are you missing out on if you do that?
It varies. So if you're looking for somewhere like Expedia, you're not going to necessarily have the same level of customer service as if you book through the airline or hotel directly. If there's a problem with your flight, if your trip has to be canceled for some reason, if you go to the airline or hotel, they're probably going to say, well, you booked through a third party, you need to go through them. And that can also happen if you book through these credit card websites. But if you're booking on a credit card website, you're getting those rewards, and depending on the price difference, those rewards could make up for what you're possibly spending extra.
This puts travelers in a dilemma, where they have to decide if they want to book with their card, or if it's cheaper to book directly with an airline or a third party. From the people you spoke to, what kinds of things did they consider when making this decision?
So I spoke with one traveler who said that he starts every search for a flight, for instance, using Google Flights, because he said that they are one of the best sites in terms of figuring out what the cheapest option is. And from there, he'll then go into his credit card travel website, and he looks at what points he's accrued, what he might have in terms of travel credits, and looks at the prices there. And then he determines the difference. In one case, for instance, he was booking a hotel for last summer in Australia, and the price difference was pretty negligible. It was more expensive on Chase's website, but only by about $20 or so. And when he took into account the fact that booking through Chase's travel website got him more rewards, given the cost of the booking, the value of those points was more than the difference in price. And since he's a frequent traveler, he knows he's going to be using those points in the future. So for him, it made sense to bite the bullet, pay a little bit extra through Chase, and book the hotel that way. But if you're not a frequent traveler, even if you have one of these credit cards, it may not make sense to do something like that, because you may not use those points right away, and then the benefit you're getting may go to waste.
A lot of these travel credit cards have an annual fee. So how does that money factor into this equation?
So it's one of the main causes of frustration for travelers I spoke with. You're paying a pretty sizable fee for some of these credit cards, upwards of $500 in some cases, and you have to do the math. So this is a good reason, before you open the card, to consider how often do I travel, and whether you're really going to get the mileage out of that card, no pun intended. But also, once you've opened the card, you want to keep doing that math. Look into how often you're actually booking through the site, getting the rewards that you're paying for. Evaluate the other benefits that come with these cards. Some of them come with gym membership rebates and things like that. Are you actually taking advantage of those? Do the math, and if you're not really getting the most out of that credit card that you could be, it may be a reason to consider closing it and opening up a card that would work better for you.
What are some of the biggest mistakes that people can make here when they're booking with their travel card?
The biggest mistake that people could make is assuming that the price is the same across different websites. You should be doing research. I know it's annoying. You should also be considering when you're traveling and the potential for hiccups and headaches. So if you're traveling during a time of year where there's going to be rainstorms, snowstorms, things that could cause your flight to be delayed or canceled. Depending on the type of trip, if you have flexibility, it may not matter. But if you don't have much flexibility, and then suddenly you're being told by your airline or hotel that you need to go through the third party to rebook, that could add complexity to what is already a stressful situation. So consider those factors when determining who you should book with. Sometimes the peace of mind is worth a few extra dollars.
That's WSJ reporter Jacob Passy. And that's it for your Money Briefing. This episode is produced by me, Ariana Aspoon, with supervising producer Melanie Roy. Thanks for listening.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Spectrum Business, made to work just like your small business. Fast, reliable internet, phone, and mobile services, made to keep up with demand and made to deliver on a small business budget. Discover more at spectrum.com/work.
A quick note before we get started. This episode contains some detailed descriptions of animals fighting each other. There will be blood, so please be warned.
You're listening to Shortwave from NPR.
Hey shortwavers, Ping Huang and the host here today, and it's a very special day. Producer Margaret Serino and I, hello, we bring you a story of one royal family.
And this isn't just any regular old royal family.
Right, this is again a species that lives underground in Africa, right?
That's Kenton Kurtz. He's the assistant curator of the Small Mammal House at Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute. And he proudly told us he's been zookeeping this colony for the whole 5 years they've been here. Ken says there's a lot we still don't know about these guys.
They weren't really studied in depth until the 1970s. They're eusocial and live in a colony. They are so long-lived, being over 30 years. They are almost cancer resistant.
They are naked mole rats! Best creatures of all time.
Totally agree. I mean, Marge, you know this. I'm actually a little bit obsessed with naked mole rats, and I will use any excuse that I can get to do a naked mole rat story, including their messy family drama.
We paid a visit to the Small Mammal House, and Ken gave us the grand tour of the castle, starting with, as you pointed out, Ping, dining halls of sorts.
There are 12 windows that look into different rooms. This room is different.
Then chambers for pooping, kind of like a 5-bath, 1-bed situation. You know those are hard to come by. There's a big plexiglass elevated box where they sleep in a big pile.
And they're kind of like cuddled up next to each other as they feed. I don't know if they're actually like cuddling or like pushing against each other, trying to sort of vie for the best bite.
We were there early in the morning, and most of these little boogers were still snoozing, all cuddled up.
I mean, it is winter. They're effectively hairless and cold-blooded with very little fat. So they're all huddled together for warmth. It was so cute, maybe even a little peaceful.
Up until recently, that observation would have matched reality. But lately, it's like a switch was flipped. It came to their clay castle in the Small Mammal House because of one event.
So it all happened very quickly.
It was last June, and the naked mole rats were getting their monthly checkups.
We're looking at, are they moving around normally? Do their mouths and their teeth look good? Teeth are really important to naked mole rats. And are they acting normal when we handle them?
Ken says they're basically checking to make sure that all the mole rats are healthy.
They were putting all of the mole rats, all 65-ish, into the bin. The keepers turned around for 5 seconds, turned back, and there was blood in that big tub with all the mole rats.
The queen was bit. She had a gash on her back. She was bleeding profusely.
And everyone else had blood on them because of the queen's wound. But we could not tell who did it. So that was our first foray into what turned into a naked mole rat.
Today on the show, naked mole rat succession. What this bloody power struggle tells us about the tension between cooperation and the animal instinct to survive.
And how a comfortable life in captivity isn't necessarily stress-free.
I'm Ping Huang.
I'm Margaret Serino.
And you're listening to Shortwave from NPR.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Spectrum Business, made to work just like your small business. Fast, reliable internet, phone, and mobile services, made to keep up with demand and made to deliver on a small business budget. Discover more at spectrum.com/work.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Solgar. As people age, cellular function declines, which may impact changes in energy and strength. Solgar Cellular Nutrition is a holistic collection of cellular nutrients formulated to help fight cellular decline and promote cell health. Learn more at cellularnutrition.solgar.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Carvana. Carvana has made it easy to sell your car. Just enter your license plate or VIN, answer a few questions, and they'll give you a real offer in seconds, and it's good for up to 7 days. Visit Carvana.com to get an instant offer today.
To understand societal upheaval, we must first understand how the colony, the naked mole rat monarchy, works. So every rat has a job that helps keep the hive going. Some of them are soldiers.
They'll go run and defend the territory and resources from other mole rat colonies, and also from predators.
In nature, they've got some enemies.
For these guys, it's snakes. Snakes come down, soldier mole rats will go, try to bite it to death and keep it up. And they actually sacrifice themselves so that the snake won't go down and eat the queen. So the snake will fill up on soldier mole rats and then continue on.
Every naked mole rat is really in it for the colony, not just themselves. Because soldiers might never breed and are kind of, genetically speaking, useless. So sometimes in the wild, they'll fall on that sword, or snake.
And then there are helper mole rats who will move around, food, build tunnels. Occasionally, scientists have described it like the nursery attendant who might move the babies around, but it's possible that's just a different role for the helpers.
Now, this colony started as a small branching off from a different zoo, and from the start, it was clear that one of the mole rats was a natural queen.
And it was obvious why. She was big, she had nipple development, she was, running through the tubes and pushing everyone out of her way, and that's what happened.
She ruled over the colony in relative peace for the past 5 years.
We thought she was holding her own, but obviously someone had to hunt for her.
100% of the naked mole rats in this colony are the queen's children. They are all from her lineage.
But we're not too worried about inbreeding here because, curiously, rodents in general tend to have a high tolerance for it.
They don't get a lot of genetic abnormalities when they mate with close relatives.
That means that when our queen was attacked at the end of June, it was by one of her own children trying to take over the throne.
In classic And the fighting happened so quickly that no one saw what happened. All they had were a bunch of clues.
We see blood smears, we see blood on maybe somebody's mouth, we'll see blood on somebody's back.
The OG queen survived that first attack. We'll call it the first battle of the rats. But then she got attacked again and again.
That final attack, the third battle of the rats, occurred November 30th.
And one big bite to her back was all it took. She lost the use of her 2 hind legs. And a queen losing her hind legs, it was a big deal because...
Typically with mole rats, they have 20% of their musculature in their jaw. So if you think about all that musculature in their jaw, a bite is really severe. We knew we couldn't isolate her for long enough to heal her up, and after 3 attacks, we knew that was it. They didn't want her to be queen anymore.
Okay, a moment of silence. After she lost the use of her legs, the zookeepers had to euthanize her. She was 11 years and 3 months old, which is young for a naked mole rat. Their typical lifespan is 30 years.
Though that gets cut short, especially if you're a hotly contested queen and your army of children has a penchant for violence.
So yeah, it was both emotional and also really anxiety-inducing. For us, we've known her. We've seen her personality. We've seen her give birth to multiple litters, take care of tons of babies. We've worked with her to try to make it so that she could have the most successful litters possible. But we knew what would happen next, which is war. Mole rat war.
It gets so much worse. The coup had finally succeeded, but the real war was only just beginning.
So we prepared ourselves. As soon as the queen left this colony, we knew there would be turmoil because there's a power vacuum, right? And we know that naked mole rat colonies need a queen. You just have to have one. All the females, we just slowly noticed like higher levels of aggression.
Ken told us that the wounds started getting more aggressive. They started seeing some mouthing behavior, naked mole rats clashing with their big front teeth. They started seeing cuts around some of the mole rats' mouths. Clearly, they'd been picking fights.
We would come in one day and find someone on their side who got in a fight overnight and wasn't able to come back from that wound.
At least 8 more mole rats have died. War has been crawling along for 2 months, with skirmishes breaking out, and then an eerie calm.
Okay, so it's been a couple months now, and what you're describing as all-out war, I have to say, looks pretty calm to my untrained eye. So tell me what you're seeing in these tapes that indicates all-out war to you, or is this kind of like, does the war kind of happen like quickly in bursts and we're just not seeing it right now?
Yes, quickly and in bursts. This is the calm before the storm. They lull you into this false sense of security, and we think, oh, things have been quiet, things are good, and then suddenly we'll come in and we'll find blood everywhere. In fact, we had some fights last night. We have a couple mole rats this morning that are wounded. We are monitoring them closely. They all look good today. They have wounds, but they're wounds that will hopefully heal on their own. But yeah, it's very tricky because right now, and this morning, everything looks okay.
And so to be clear, the ones that attacked the queen we think are female soldier mole rats that were trying to depose her so that another queen could rise.
I think so. It seems like all the ones that have died with the biggest scarring have been females because the reproductive tract has been starting to develop.
This part is wild. Since the queen has died, this weird thing has started to happen, and it takes a little explaining. Usually the queen of the colony is the only one that has fully developed reproductive organs. Like, she's the only one that's capable of mating and having babies. But since the queen died, several other females in the group have basically been going through puberty, mole rat puberty. Like, they're starting to develop the ability to breed.
It's not super clear why. So one hypothesis is that the queen usually goes around and spreads some kind of chemical signal that suppresses this kind of development in other mole rats. You know, she's basically asserting her crowning dominance, and that's lifted now that she's gone.
Ken and the zookeepers have been looking back, trying to piece together what happened.
The best guess here is that something is going on. The queen is either viewed as weak, the queen is not visiting the other females in the colony as much. She typically would do something to keep the other females from being reproductively developed, and then she stops. Maybe she's weaker, maybe she's sicker, maybe she's spending time on something else, and so a new queen would pop up on the other side of the colony.
Ken says it might play out differently in the wild. Like, if a queen's colony is spread out and she can't keep all of the females around her in check, maybe one of those females would ditch her crew and start a new colony.
Some of the mole rats might not have liked her, but to Ken, she was perfect.
So for 5 years, she was like clockwork. It was 86, 87 days. She gave birth to an average of 10 babies. So, I mean, that's a lot.
At least from a breeding standpoint, she was perfect. But at the end of the day, Ken, all of us really were just observers.
We have to be hands-off because we don't know what's going through their brains. We don't understand their social structure. We can't. Sometimes it feels like if we intervene, we might be supporting the wrong one, and we don't even know what that means, right?
Maybe you can hear it in his voice, but the way Ken talks about these rats, it's with awe and a bit of desperation. He's tired. He wants it to be over.
When a fight is complete and one of the mole rats has died, we sort of take a moment to think, okay, maybe that was it. Like, maybe those were the last two that were fighting, and now we have a winner, and she's going to become the queen. And then yesterday we saw fighting again, and we thought, okay, so not right now. Now these two have to get through something. So it's really frustrating, because we would love to have a stable colony and the bloodshed to end.
The bloodbath over the past 6 months has changed how Ken sees these naked mole rats.
Do you think there's like lessons to be learned from their social dynamics or from the way that you observe them interacting? Like, you know, is power dangerous? Like, where do you go with that?
Yeah, I think that's a funny question. It's been the past 5 years, and I feel like, of course, we can talk about
nationwide, plus budgeting tools and payment by invoice. Learn more at easycater.com. Support for NPR and the following message come from TIAA, on a mission with Wyclef Jean to give back with Wyclef's new record, Paper Right. With TIAA, streams turn into donations to a nonprofit called First Generation Investors. Stream now, wherever you get your music.
Here at Planet Money, we bring complex economic ideas down to earth. We find weird, fun, interesting stories that explain the way money shapes our lives. Inflation, recessions, the price of gas, we've got you. Listen now to the Planet Money podcast from NPR.
The world is changing every hour, and catching up once or twice a day might not be enough. For quick updates throughout your day, there's the NPR News Now podcast. Every hour, on the hour, we bring you up to speed on the latest news from around the world in 5 minutes. Listen now to the NPR News Now podcast from NPR.
Heads up, there's going to be some salty language. Hey everyone, you're listening to Code Switch. I'm B.A. Parker. Now, did you know only 4 artists have won the Grammy for Album of the Year 3 times? Paul Simon, Frank Sinatra, Stevie Wonder, and Taylor Swift.
As patients currently taking Aduhelm will have access to it until November 1st. But patients taking the drug in clinical trials will lose access May 1st. Biogen had licensed the drug from a Swiss biotech called Neuroimmune. Neuroimmune says it will continue to work on the drug and aims to seek approval for a version that is given by injection instead of infusion. Cindy Lupkin, NPR News.
And you're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Progressive Insurance. Progressive is looking for dedicated and forward-thinking individuals to join their growing team. More information, including application, at progressive.com/careers. From Procter.
And she's up for the award again in a few days with her newest album, Midnights, along with 6 other nominations. Now, I've got no dog in this fight. No reason to compare Graceland to Songs of the Key of Life to 1989. But Taylor Swift is having a moment. I mean, she's been having decades of moments. But having recently been named Time's Person of the Year, her Eras concert tour grossed over $1 billion, the first concert tour to ever do that. I mean, even just the movie of the Eras tour attracted almost 5 million fans on opening weekend. Heck, USA Today even hired a Taylor Swift reporter. Swift is an American sweetheart. America has watched Taylor Swift grow up from the teenager with an acoustic guitar to the 34-year-old pop behemoth, all with her girlhood sort of enshrined. Taylor Swift, whether she likes it or not, represents a type of white girlhood that has become aspirational for many people. So then it begs the question, whose girlhood gets to be cherished or valued? I'm not here to answer these questions on my own. Joining me on the mic today is our very own version of a dedicated Taylor Swift reporter right here on the Code Switch team. Our senior editor, Leah Dinella, has been writing about Swift since 2016, but thinking about her for a lot longer. So welcome back to the show, Leah.
Thanks, Parker. Good to be here.
So, are you a Taylor Swift fan?
I never know quite how to answer that. I definitely pay attention to her, and there's plenty of her music that I like. I've seen all of her music videos, I think. But is that because I'm a fan? I'm not sure. You know, it's hard to ignore her cultural dominance, and she has the power to affect entire economies by which cities she decides to go to on her Eras tour. She also has one of the most diehard fan bases on the planet. That's a huge crowd of Swift fans who didn't get tickets to her concert, just singing along outside of the stadium.
Good for them. If you like it, I love it.
It's sweet, right? And it feels like Swift has inspired this really kind of wholesome community in a lot of ways. But as with any person who holds a lot of power and influence,
there are things about her and her persona that I think are in need of some serious dissection and critique, which I found myself kind of nervously admitting to a crowd of about 700 people, many of them diehard Swifties, in Bloomington, Indiana a few months ago.
Hi everyone. I am excited and very nervous to be the last presenter at this conference.
Fox News has been the Republican Party's biggest cheerleader almost since it premiered in 1996. Fox. Nearly 3 decades later, many Republicans perceive Fox as the de facto kingmaker for all kinds of Republican candidates, including presidential.
He's got basically a Praetorian guard of the conservative media, Fox News, the websites, all the stuff. They just don't hold them accountable because they're worried about losing viewers.
That's former Republican presidential candidate and current Florida Governor Ron DeSantis explaining why he thinks Donald Trump maintains a stranglehold on the Republican Party. That kingmaker status brought Fox News power, ratings, and billions in profits. And it spawned a succession of imitators and competition like Newsmax.
Almost 20% of the American people say they will vote for whoever Taylor Swift tells them to vote for, and now the Biden...
And One America News.
OAN Live is the best way to stay up to date on all of the hard-hitting, straight-shooting, national and international headlines.
But for Fox, that synergy with Trump and the Republicans has come with significant risk and significant consequences.
There is a settlement in the high-stakes trial between Dominion Voting Systems and Fox.
Dominion Voting Systems sued Fox for defamation after network anchors amplified Trump's false election claims. The company settled at a cost of nearly $790 million. Soon after, Fox's most popular anchor, Tucker Carlson, left the network. And then, another bombshell.
Now to a changing of the guards at one of the biggest and most influential media companies in the world.
After 7 decades, Rupert Murdoch stepped down as chairman of the company he built. Consider this. Fox News still has the power to shape Republican politics as the country heads into another presidential election. But is that power diminished in 2024? I'm Ari Shapiro. It's Wednesday, January 31st.
You ever been there when an uncomfortable question about race comes up, but you don't know how to answer? That's where Code Switch lives. Each week, we're talking about race and how it intersects with every other aspect of your life, especially when it's uncomfortable. Listen now to the Code Switch podcast from NPR.
You ever been there when an uncomfortable question about race comes up, but you don't know how to answer? That's where Code Switch lives. Each week, we're talking about race and how it intersects with every other aspect of your life, from politics and pop culture to history and food. Listen now to the Code Switch podcast from NPR.
When Argentina won the World Cup, it meant so much to so many people, but there's one person in particular for whom it meant everything. Soccer legend Lionel Messi. In The Last Cup, a bilingual podcast series, I explore why. Listen now to The Last Cup podcast from NPR and Futuro Studios.
It's Consider This from NPR. The 2024 presidential election is looking more and more like it's going to be a repeat of 2020. Trump versus Biden, with Fox News and others in conservative media lining up behind the former president. But in the last 4 years, Fox has paid hundreds of millions of dollars to settle one lawsuit, it's facing another, and imitators are trying to get a piece of Fox's conservative viewership. NPR media correspondent David Folkenflik covers all of this, and he joined me to talk about it. David, we heard Ron DeSantis say Fox chose to back Trump, and that's why Trump is dominating the primaries. Is that true?
Well, I mean, look, give him high marks for audacity. It's true as far as it went in terms of it surrounding Trump now, but Fox started the primary season sort of last spring by embracing Ron DeSantis. You saw him called the future on the front pages of the New York Post, its sister newspaper tabloid. And Fox then essentially, I wouldn't say it fully endorsed Ron DeSantis, but it gave him a chance to fully audition with the voters. It gave him Fox viewers hour after hour of favorable coverage, of gentle interviews, of things like announcements of endorsements, the kind of treatment they, in a sense, gave back to Trump in 2016. And he tanked the audition. The voters really didn't respond. We saw that in polls, and we really saw that starting in Iowa and in New Hampshire. Trump was actually mad at Fox for the amount of time that they were lavishing on DeSantis because Rupert and Lachlan Murdoch wanted him to have the chance to claim the title. So now Fox is leaping to meet the expectations of its viewers and Trump's voters. It's playing defense for Trump just as DeSantis is now describing, by picking on DeSantis, by picking on Nikki Haley, and by picking on President Joe Biden.
Well, if Fox gave DeSantis all of these softballs and DeSantis whiffed, that suggests Fox might not be the kingmaker it once was.
Look, Fox very much wants to look like a kingmaker, and the truth is just more complicated. If you think about it, in years past, Roger Ailes, the longtime chairman of Fox News, and Rupert Murdoch himself were very interested in having CIA Director David Petraeus take on Barack Obama during his re-election campaign in 2012. There was a little 2016 boomlet around Rand Paul, the Kentucky senator. It's not that Murdoch can dictate or determine who the next candidate is going to be, but they